This man can do anything he wants with his leisure time at this point. And you're telling me as a hobby, for fun, you are just giving a platform to rich people? Rick has also said that AI is the punk rock of coding, the way of code, the timeless art of vibe coding.
Sorry, Anthony, but this man knows more about punk music than you ever will. I want to make this video to just talk about this really, really funny way Anthony Fantano chooses to apply his morals. And I want to not talk about Anthony Fantano in general as much as about just Rick Rubin and his timeline and the way his Polymarket ad elicited this reaction and his pro-AI stance elicited this reaction. I've made other videos about AI, especially in the context of Phoenix Flexen's song Rubbers. I just want to talk about my experience with Rick Rubin and where I think Anthony Fantano falls very flat in his take here. So obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, Rick Rubin, huge producer, music mogul, is quite unique in the sense that he's produced a lot of huge albums. He's produced Red Hot Chili Peppers, Slayer, Beastie Boys, a wide range of genres, mainly sort of coming from mainly 90s rock and metal and hip hop. And he is singular as a personality because he doesn't play any instruments. He's not a musician at all. He just has his taste. And he's been adamant for a long time that he really goes back to his taste a lot. And that sort of manifested itself in the 90s in like very dry, direct production, which has come to really define and still stick culturally, at least more music that isn't super mainstream, but sort of is in that indie, influential yet mainstream appeal space. Anyway, so that's Rick Rubin's background, and he released this book a few years ago called The Creative Act. So I'm going to be really obnoxious and just judge The Creative Act without reading it, but I have read The Artist's Way, and everyone I talk to who's read it says it's just a ripoff of The Artist's Way. And it doesn't really matter how good the book is. If people like it, but he went on this press run a few years ago talking about this book and about his view on creativity, and it's just always disappointing to me to see somebody who's clearly so on the inside of so many styles of music, who hopefully transcends. Of course, it's fine to have commercial interests, but I would hope that somebody like that will be wise enough to not piss people like me off, or people who can tell that this is just a complete press run where he says things like this.
Everything exists. How the trees grow and why there are mountains and anything that we can see in the outside world and every discovery are all outgrowths of this source energy.
And things like this.
When you have an intuition to take the stairs instead of the elevator, or I always go home this way, but today for some reason I feel like going this other way.
Yeah.
Listen to them. See what happens. Be open to there's more going on than we know.
It's just nonsense. It's just fluff. If you want to read a book about the music industry and like make smart decisions, read All About the Music Business by Donald Les Passman or something, or read The Artist's Way, honestly. But I get it. It's fair to want to release a book and want to cash out. That's okay. When Rick Rubin does this, nobody cares. Nobody who's an artist or creative or Anthony Fantano gives a hoot about him going on these podcasts, saying all this just fluff and just like word vomit. And it's fine. But then he's pro-AI and he says something that's actually provocative. Anthony Fantano describes his takes here, like Rick Rubin talks about coding, vibe coding, and using AI to code being like this amazing creative revolution, which it is. It is. And of course, the fact that these LLMs are owned by huge tech companies and they're going to take our data, that matters. But like the fact that these tools are incredibly powerful and help a lot of people, and the reason why they're popular is because they add value to people's lives. Like people like Anthony Fantano don't understand that. It's not like we are all manipulated puppets who are just using these LLMs because we have no choice. We have all the choice in the world. There are so many tech companies trying to create alternatives. Like we have Google search, we have all these social media platforms competing for being the main search engine. But you know why ChatGPT won and became the quickest adopted platform of all time throughout history? It's because people like it and people use it, and it adds value and helps people with their lives because the use cases are infinite. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent here. What I want to get to is that Rick Rubin has a point, and Rick Rubin is saying what he thinks, which was surprised me because I thought after seeing his book press run that he is just going to say anything to sell books and just say whatever silly thing. Like he said stuff, he says in this podcast run, he said things like, yeah, like I wake up like at 8 and I don't get to work until 1. Of course, that's an interesting insight about Rick Rubin's life as a huge producer who still produces fairly interesting work from time to time, but it just feels like a huge anomaly. Anyway, so he goes out and he says these kind of interesting things about AI. And of course, then it doesn't fit Anthony Fantano's worldview and moral value structure. And he does this Polymarket ad and it comes off as really corny. And I think it's okay, but like, if you think Rick Rubin is corny, call him out when he is corny in the first place, not when it like politically aligns with something that you don't like because you're so in your ways about this being a bad thing and nothing is ever going to change your mind because you are just too old to learn new things and see different perspectives. The thing is, Anthony, I think you should be a little bit more humble because this guy knows more about punk and has had more impact on punk than you ever will. So if he calls something punk, you should listen. You should shut up and you should listen to what the punk producer, one of the biggest punk producers of all time, has to say about punk. You should listen to that. And maybe he has a point, and maybe the AI question is not as black and white as you have indoctrinated yourself that it is. And I mean, to be fair, Anthony Fantano has influenced. The things he rates highly does really, really, really gain an audience. Every album I've ever listened to that Anthony Fantano gives a 10, I actually think is excellent. So he does have fair taste. This is just about his politics. I agree, the Polymarket thing is weird and it's kind of scary. And we're in this economy where soon, I think people bet 250 billion last year on Polymarket, which if that keeps growing to 1 billion, like we're going to have like a 30th of our economy being bet on Polymarket each year, which could happen and that would be scary. But it's like, why are people doing this? What are the benefits of it? What are the negative sides of it? And the same with the AI thing. Again, you can watch my Phoenix Flexin video to see a bit more of my views in that context of music creation. But I just wanted to point out that like this is super inconsistent from Fantano. Call Rick Rubin out when he is being tacky and corny, not when it just suits your view of what's tacky and corny. To me, I see him doing the Polymarket thing. I see him doing the AI thing, which again, I sort of agree with. Although I totally understand Anthony Fantano's perspective on it too. But I just think, you know, it's just so selective. Like Rick Rubin whistle blew himself for being a corny dude who is kind of out of touch a long time ago. Now that he's like this billionaire person who is so rich, you can just completely blame that. And it doesn't matter what he says because he's so rich that it's like, yo, you have to attack people and talk to people and judge them based on what they say, not how much money they have. That's my thoughts on this topic. Thanks so much for watching. And yeah, Anthony Fantano sucks.